Hello and welcome to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio, researched and written in Indianapolis and produced in the studios of WRMI Shortwave in Okeechobee, Florida. I'm Jeff White. Today on Wavescan, the BBC Far Eastern Relay Station, Part 1, the original BBC relay station in Singapore. We'll have a report, our first, from the High Frequency Coordination Conference, A15 Conference in Muscat, Oman. Our Japan DX report will be on the program today, and our special QSL of the week, the world's shortest reception report. The current BBC Far Eastern relay station in Singapore traces its earliest origins back to the year 1937. It was on March 1st of that year that a new studio and transmitter facility was officially opened at Caldecott Hill on Thompson Road on the edge of suburban Singapore. Ray Robinson has our report.
Thanks, Jeff. This new international radio broadcasting station contained 5 transmitters, 4 low-power shortwave transmitters, each rated at just 500 watts, and a 2-kilowatt medium-wave transmitter on 1333 kilohertz that had previously been on the air at a downtown location, a government building in Empress Place, Singapore. The station identified as Radio Malaya Singapore, and its 4 transmitters with half a kilowatt on shortwave also used the call signs ZHO, ZHP, and ZHN, and the 2-kilowatt transmitter on medium wave used the call sign ZHL. Most of the programming for the new radio station was produced locally in the adjoining new studio building on Caldecott Hill. However, live off-air programming from the BBC in London via the 2 80-kilowatt shortwave transmitters at Daventry, their senders 4 and 5, was also inserted into the daily scheduling. It was intended that the Caldecott location was only temporary as far as the transmitters were concerned, and work began at Jurong on the south coast towards the western edge of Singapore Island for a more permanent transmitter facility. At the same time, in 1937, as the British colonial authorities in Singapore were developing their new radio broadcasting station on Caldecott Hill, the BBC in London was making plans to establish a relay station in Singapore, their very first overseas relay station. Then, as warlike conditions were emerging in Europe, the BBC attempted to actually purchase the new radio station in Singapore. Soon after war broke out on continental Europe, a new 100-kilowatt Marconi transmitter was dispatched by ship for Singapore. However, this ship was torpedoed and sunk, and its electronic cargo was lost. As a replacement, the BBC obtained a 50-kilowatt RCA shortwave transmitter from the United States, and this was dispatched to Singapore by ship also, for installation at the new station already under construction at Jurong. A simple antenna system had already been installed. However, before work was completed on the entire facility, the transmitter was hurriedly removed due to the outbreak of war in the Pacific. It was then shipped to Barbados in the Caribbean, where it was installed at the Cable and Wireless Communication Station at Bearded Hall under the call sign VPO. The entire facility at Caldecott Hill was taken over by the Japanese administration, and it was reactivated as Shonan Radio. Their first broadcast was on March 27, 1942. In addition, the Japanese constructed a new transmitter station at an adjoining property at Jurong, and they installed 4 shortwave transmitters there at 7.5 kilowatts each. 3 of these transmitters were new units, and a 4th was taken from Penang Island, where it had been on the air previously under the British as ZHJ. The final broadcast as Shonan Radio took place 3 years later, on February 3rd, 1945. Soon afterwards, the studio suite on Caldecott Hill and the 2 side-by-side transmitter stations at Jurong were taken over by the returned British administration. The original Radio Malaya transmitter site was developed for use by the Royal Air Force, and the new Japanese transmitter site was taken over for use by 4 different radio organisations. There was C&W, Cable and Wireless, BMA, the British Military Administration, SEAC, the Southeast Asia Command Singapore, and BFEBS, the British Far East Broadcasting Service. Even though all 4 organisations were using the same facilities, the 3 broadcasting organisations, BMA, SEAC and BFEBS, each issued their own separate QSL cards. Initially, though, leftover stock of the pre-war Radio Malaya card with its Malayan sunset scene was in use. On June the 30th, 1946, the SEAC services ended. BMA became Radio Malaya, and BFEBS became a BBC relay station with off-air programming from the BBC in London. The identification announcement for the BBC relays was given as the Voice of Britain. In January 1946, work began on the installation of 4 Marconi shortwave transmitters, 10 kilowatt units, model number SWB-11. These transmitters came from India, and it's presumed they were leftover units no longer needed for the forces service in Delhi. The first unit was activated on January the 19th, 1946, and the second on February the 4th. All 4 were in use by the November of the following year, 1947. The BBC officially took over the Jurong station on August the 8th, 1948. At this stage, 3 of the recently installed transmitters were now listed at just 7.5 kilowatts and 1 at 5.5 kilowatts. So to increase the coverage of the Jurong transmitter station, the BBC announced they planned to install a Marconi 100 kilowatt transmitter at the location. However, due to the development of an international airport nearby, this projected expansion had to be cancelled. The tall antenna towers needed for it would have been an obstruction to aircraft. The BBC then began to look for another suitable location, which they ultimately found on the nearby Malay Peninsula, and thus work began on a huge new station in the rubber plantation areas near the southern tip of the peninsula. In April 1949, the BBC ended its usage of the Jurong transmitter base on Singapore Island, and their Far Eastern service was transferred temporarily to the SEAC shortwave station at Ekala, north of Colombo in Ceylon, now Sri Lanka. The QSL cards verifying the shortwave transmissions from the BBC Far Eastern relay station reflect the changes that took place in that era. Initially, BFEBS QSL cards quite clearly verified reception of the station. After the BBC takeover, appreciation was expressed to the listener for the reports, though, as was stated on the card, they could no longer officially QSL reception reports from listeners. When we take up the continuing story of the BBC Far Eastern relay station next time, here again in Wavescan, we plan to present the information regarding their temporary usage of the SEAC shortwave station in Ceylon.
You're listening to Wavescan from Adventist World Radio. Send your comments and reception reports to Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the United States. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the USA. Or you can email us at wavescan@awr.org. Our email once again, wavescan@awr.org.
During the first week of February, many of the world's shortwave broadcasters got together at Muscat, the capital of Oman, on the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula, for the A15 season High Frequency Coordination Conference, or HFCC. This is a twice-yearly event intended to coordinate shortwave frequency usage in order to eliminate potential interference on the bands. Jerry Plummer of WWCR in Nashville, Tennessee, and myself had the pleasure of being at that meeting in Oman, and today we bring you the first of a number of reports that we recorded there. Well, we're back at the City Seasons Hotel again on Wavescan this week at the HFCC ASBU ABU Global Shortwave Coordination Conference, the 11th conference.
Yes, in Muscat, Oman.
That's right. And a lot of people may not know where Oman is. When I told them in the U.S., they thought it was in Jordan. They were thinking of Amman.
Amman. This is Oman.
This is Oman.
That's the country.
And it's located between, it borders on Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates.
It does.
As well as the
Gulf,
Gulf,
right across from the Gulf. We were looking on the map, didn't realize that right across the Gulf is India.
That's
and
right.
Pakistan, too. So we're on the far side away from Yemen, actually right on the coast, only a couple of blocks from the water, I guess, isn't it, Jeff, something like that?
Yeah. In fact, we took the organizers here took us on a ferry cruise the other night, on a ship, or a ferry ship called the Hormuz.
The Hormuz.
Which is named after the Hormuz Strait.
Yeah, right.
Which is just between Oman and Iran. We're very close to Iran.
Yes, we're actually over in an area that you'd have to look at it on a map. It sounds, you mentioned Iran, Iraq, Yemen, and I understand, but this is a very extremely safe area.
Well, that's one of the things that the Omani organizers have tried to emphasize, is that this is a very, as you say, a very organized, a very safe, a very clean, a very modern country in the middle of the Middle East, in the middle of a lot of turmoil in other places. Yeah.
It's listed as one of the safest cities on earth.
Yeah, almost no crime.
No, almost zero crime. So, we feel safe here. But you just kind of want to bring it up because people say, oh, wow, where are you? And no, it's not Amman, Jordan. It's Muscat, Oman.
Yeah.
And it's been a very pleasant and productive week, don't you think, Jeff?
Oh, I think so. We had about 120 people here from, I don't know, maybe 50 different countries.
50, something like that. I know it was at least 50. I don't think we got a final count, but it's a very good turnout. And as usual, from scattered all over the globe.
And all of these people are here planning the shortwave frequency schedules for the A15 season.
Yeah, exactly.
Which begins March, I think, 29th.
Yeah, 29th this time around. So all of that planning is taking place. So when the season occurs, then the frequency collisions won't be there. And that's, again, like you say, Jeff, that's what this thing is all about, is solving frequency collisions. And, some people say, and to a degree it's true, you say, well, can't you do that like email? And to some degree you can, but it's really a lot to be said about actually talking to the person and establishing a relationship that solves those from ever happening in many cases.
Yes, we had one collision to deal with here where it involved 3 different administrations, and we were able to take care of it in about 5 minutes, just going from one table to another and then there it is, which would have taken maybe days to carry on via email.
Oh yeah, and in the meantime, you got collisions, so nobody's hearing any of the broadcasts. So it's certainly very, very useful. And I know you've been quite busy this week, working with many things with the organizers, which is let me see if I got the Port Authority Radio and Television part.
Yes, Public Authority of Radio and Television.
Public Authority. And I know you've been working with a host of those guys all week with a bunch of different things that have occurred. And as is typical, you have shown your extreme flexibility, and it has been somewhat needed at times this week.
Well, sometimes in this part of the world, things are rather informal and get arranged as they go along.
They do.
There was a very good schedule set up of the activities for this 5-day conference, and many activities that we'll mention here in a moment, but other things are added at the last minute and changed and so on, and so you have to be sort of flexible and go with the flow.
You do. They have been extremely gracious hosts. I think probably some of the best in the last several years. And like you say, we were on. It's a ferry that automobiles are hauled on, but it has like 2 floors that above it with plenty of seating. And our gracious host had a dinner. We were out sort of around Muscat. It was very pleasant. I think it was a lot of fun.
We could see the Muscat at night from out at the sea.
Sure
It's a
could,
very
yeah.
interesting perspective. And they even had a helicopter deck on the top.
Yeah. When they let us go up onto the helicopter deck, and it was very good. You know, they said that boat has ship, I guess, has 4 engines that, and running at top speed, could go almost 100 kilometers an hour. That's
It moved along pretty fast.
It did.
Yeah.
And they've arranged a lot of things to do after the coordinating sessions are finished.
We had a dinner at the Intercontinental Hotel in a what they called the Palm Garden.
Yeah.
Which was basically a garden with a bunch of date palms in it.
It was. And here, not much rain at all this time of year, and the temperatures from a Fahrenheit standpoint at evenings are, I don't know what, maybe 72 or something like that. Very pleasant, very well put together.
Very nice. We also had, we had the dinner on the boat, and then we've also had a city tour on a double-decker bus.
Oh, yeah, like a British bus, that's right, yes.
Taking us around to see the different areas of Muscat, some of the Royal Opera House. We saw
Yes.
the Corniche along the coast.
The palace,
All right.
I think our guests are very anxious for us to, all of us from scattered around the globe, they're very anxious to show us that Oman is a safe country, it's a good place to visit, and they're very gracious in we want you to see what we do, what we have.
Yeah, this is a sultanate, they call it, because there's a sultan,
Qaboos,
who is, I guess, similar to a king.
I would say so, yeah.
I don't know exactly what the difference is between king and sultan, but it's
pretty close.
Okay,
yeah.
And the sultan has really brought this country into modernity within the last 40 years, I think.
It has, yeah.
Of course, the oil business has helped.
Oh yeah, there's construction galore going on all over this place. But we're only like a block and a half from the ocean itself, actually.
Well, thanks very much, Jerry Plummer of WWCR, for being with us today from the HFCC in Muscat. And we'll have more reports from Oman in coming editions of Wavescan. Now let's go to Yukiko Tsuji in Tokyo with her DX news for this month.
Hello and welcome to the DX Report of the Month from Japan Shortwave Club, edited by Toshi Otake, and I'm Yukiko Tsuji. We have several DX reports from our club members this week. Radio Veritas Asia from Philippines was heard on 11945 kHz on January 30th from 1000 to 1010 UTC in Chinese. SIO rating was 433. ID in English was given at 1000, followed by gospel program in Chinese. Radio Japan via Palau was heard on 11925 kHz on February 8th from 1400 to 1430 UTC in English. SIO rating was 353. News and friends around the world were on the air. Radio Australia from Brandon was heard on 5995 kHz on January 28th from 1045 to 1053 UTC in English. SIO rating was 221. Talk program was broadcast. Radio Thailand was received on 13745 kHz on February 7th from 0000 to 0100 UTC in English. SIO rating was 454. National news was aired, followed by global news at 0023, business news at 0036, and ASEAN Focus at 0044. Trans World Radio India via Tashkent, Uzbekistan was heard on 7505 kHz on February 7th from 1514 with interval signal to 1530 UTC in Punjabi. SIO rating was 343. The program broadcast was The Way of Life in English and Punjabi. Gawalon Radio via Davaya, UAE was heard on 15215 kHz on February 11th from 1159 to 1229 UTC in Tibetan. SIO rating was 454, then down to 453. Interval signal, which is the same as that of FEBA, was given at 1159. Then religious talk program by female and male announcers was broadcast. A few Tibetan folk songs were played. The postal address of the station was given at 1226. Evangelische Missionsgemeinden via Issoudun, France, was heard on 11995 kHz on January 31st from 1500 to the sign-off at 1530 UTC in Russian. SIO rating was 353. Gospel talk and hymn were aired. Radio Exterior de España from Spain was received on 11940 kHz on February 10th from 2159 to 2210 UTC in Spanish. SIO rating was 522. ID was given at 2200, then news started. Radio Havana, Cuba was heard on 11880 kHz on February 10th from 2224 to 2240 UTC in English. SIO rating was 353. Sport news was broadcast. Radio Inconfidencia from Belo Horizonte, Brazil, was heard on 15190.2 kHz on February 5th from 0802 to 0900 UTC in Portuguese. SIO rating was 252. Local pop music and the talk program were aired. ID was given at 0900. Finally, Japan Shortwave Club will issue the QSL cards for the correct reports on our segment of Wavescan program. We are issuing QSL card by email to the report sent by email. Our address for your email report is jswcqsl@live.jp. I repeat, jswcqsl@live.jp. We continue to issue the printed QSL card by the same system as before. Your report should be addressed to JSWC PO Box 44, Kamakura, which is KAMAKURA, postal code 248-8691, Japan. $1 ILC or $2 for return postage will be appreciated. For this edition of DX Report, we would like to thank Mr. Iwao Nagatani, Mr. Satoshi Ueyama, Mr. Hirokazu Mitsumoto, and Mr. Chiaki Shimada for sharing the information with us. Thank you for listening, and please join us for our next edition of DX Report of Japan Shortwave Club. I am Yukiko Tsuji in Tokyo.
Thank you very much, Yukiko. On Monday, January 21st, 1946, our editor Adrian Peterson was in the home of Ern Suffolk, who lived a half-hour bicycle ride from his home in a small country town in South Australia. Ern was a prominent international radio monitor who had assembled a large collection of QSL cards in those days, and in subsequent time he was the DX editor for Radio Australia. On that auspicious summer day, Adrian was tuning his elaborate shortwave receiver, and he heard the familiar sign-off routine from the Voice of America, loud and clear. In mentioning this item of shortwave reception, Adrian asked Ern, in his teenage naivete, if he should send a reception report. He stated, "Well, you can only try." Adrian asked where he should send the report, and he suggested that he try both locations, VOA in Hawaii and VOA OWI in San Francisco. Adrian did indeed send to both locations a reception report on this brief 1/2-minute transmission from VOA Honolulu, in the hopes that at least one of these addresses would respond with a QSL card. Well, imagine his surprise when in due course Adrian received 2 QSL cards, each of which was postmarked Honolulu and San Francisco on the same date, March 5th. The Honolulu QSL card shows a brief typed QSL text listing the date, January 21st, 1946, and the frequency, 6,120 kilohertz. The card shows an artistic representation of the Pacific Ocean, and the station identification, the VOA Voice of America KRHO Honolulu TH, Territory of Hawaii. in large red and blue ink. The California QSL card was their regular QSL card with the large red, white, and blue areas or blocks. However, the large white panel that usually shows a call sign in large letters is left blank, and a typewriter in blue ink shows the call sign KRHO and the frequency 6120 kilohertz. Also typed onto this card is the time of reception, 1000 to 1000 and 1/2 GMT. Unique is the fact that such a short reception report, just half a minute, was verified with 2 QSL cards from different locations, and the fact that both were postmarked at their vastly separated locations on the same date. By the way, we do not recommend that you send such short reception reports. We end today's Wavescan with some traditional Arab music that we brought back from Oman. Thanks for listening to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio, researched and written in Indianapolis by Adrian Peterson. Next week, French radio in the South Pacific, the radio scene in New Caledonia, Part 3. Another report from the HFCC conference in Oman, our Philippine DX reports, and of course our special QSL of the week. Several QSL cards are available for this program. Send your AWR and KSDA reception reports for Wavescan to the AWR address in Indianapolis, and also to the station your radio is tuned to, which may be KVOH, WWCR, or WRMI, or to the AWR relay stations that carry Wavescan. Remember, too, you can send a reception report to each of the DX reporters when their segment is on the air here in Wavescan, from Bangladesh, Japan, the Philippines, Australia, and India. They will verify with their own colorful QSL card. Return postage and an address label are always appreciated. Our Wavescan address is Wavescan Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana 46229, USA. That's Wavescan Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana 46229, USA. Our email address is wavescan@awr.org. That's wavescan@awr.org. I'm Jeff White at WRMI in Okeechobee. Till next week, good listening, everyone.